So today what we're going to do is talk about a couple of different ways to do some sorting. None of these are really super efficient, but we're going to talk about 3 different ones. And if you stick around and you're in 162, you're going to quickly learn that there are other bizarre ways to search. But just like the binary search, you need to do a prep of a sort first, some kind of sort. Welcome, CJ. All we're missing is Jug and William. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about, let me get in my speaker mode so I can see. First one I want to talk about under sorting, which is section 8.3 in our book. First thing we need to do is talk about what's the difference between ascending and descending. Ascending is going up a mountain, descending is going down. Descending is going down like if I went from 9 down to 1. Ascending is going from 1 up to 9 or from A to Z. Okay, so you're going to hear terms when it comes to sorting of ascending and descending. Now, in the world of sorts, there are 3 pretty much main categories. There's a selection sort, and then there's different types of selection sorts. There's exchange sorts, and we're actually going to look at 2 different exchange sorts, and there's something called an insertion sort. Insertion sort is one that, it's like a deck of cards. As I get a card, I put it in my hand in sorted order. So if I start handing you cards one at a time, you're going to insert them into the right spot. So by the way of insertion, things are actually going to be sorted. Selection sort is one where you're going to somehow or other go through your list of numbers, pick one that you want, and move it to a certain spot. And most common is the selection sort we're going to look at is we're going to look at an array of numbers. We're going to start in the first location, look through all the numbers, find the smallest, and swap it and put it to the beginning. Okay. The exchange sort, that's one as we go through, we're going to be doing side-by-side swaps. We're just going to keep swapping and swapping and swapping if we need to put things in order. And as I said, we're going to look at 2 different exchange sorts. Okay, I just said a whole bunch of stuff, and it was probably really easy to black out or stop and womp, 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 womp. So let's get into our first of 3 sorts. First one is the bubble sort, and it's going to use this idea of exchanging things. In fact, it's going to use a swap. So before we go any farther, I think we need to consider what a swap function would look like. So I'm going to come over here, and I have 2 values, x and y. X is 4 and y is 7. And I'd like to swap those. My camera is just goofy. I'd like to swap those. I'd like x to now be 7 and y to now be 4. How am I going to do it? Well, I'm going to have to create a temporary variable so that I don't lose a value when I do a swap. I'm going to start out, I'm going to say temp gets a value of x. Temp gets a value of x. So temp's now 4. Going in reverse order, I'm now going to send that over. X can now get the value of y. So x now becomes 7. And then my last step would be y equals temp. So y would get the value of temp. So it would now be 4. So I needed a temporary variable to hold the value so that I could swap the 3 of them around. So something nice, neat, simple, tuck it away. So that's how I'm going to swap. All right, so coming back to my bubble sort, it's going to use the swap. And here's what's going to happen. I'm going to compare items in my array, 0 subscript to 1 subscript. So if I come down and look at 4 and 14, are they sorted? Would they need to swap? No. So these 2 are okay. So the first thing I look at is side by side, 0 and 1. Now I'm going to look at 1 and 2. Do they need sorted?
Yes.
Yeah, so I'm going to swap those, make this an 8 and this a 14. I compare these 2. side by side, 14 and 9. Do they need swapped?
Yep.
Yep. So this now becomes 9. This is 14. I compare 14 and 20. Do they need swapped?
No.
20 and 38.
No.
38, 40.
No.
40 and 24 is a yes. 40 and 33 is a yes. 40 and 41 is a no. 41 and 27 is a yes. And 41 and 30 is a yes. So I went through, and it's still not sorted, but it's a lot cleaner than it was a moment ago. Now, what did I just do? Well, I used an array. I used a for loop, and I went through this doing my comparisons, checking if I needed to swap or not. Now, what if I didn't make any swaps? What would we know?
That they're in order.
They're in order, right? So as long as I'm making at least one swap, then I know I need to do it again. So I did make a swap. I need to go through again. 4 and 8, they're good. 8 and 9, they're good. 9 and 14, they're good. 14 and 20, they're good. 20 and 28, they're good. Or excuse me, 38. 38 and 24, I'd need to swap. Okay, and so I'm going to keep going through and say, okay, I did swap. Guess what? I need to go through again. All right, so let's start to do some pseudocode for this. I just went through this, and this is subscript 0. This is subscript 11. And what was that first way to go through there? Well, it seems as though I went through using a for loop. All right. So I'm going to go for counter equals, and what might be the first subscript I had to look at?
0.
Well, I wanted to compare 0 to 1, right? And I wanted to compare these all the way up to 10 compared to 11. So give me an idea for my for loop.
For counter equals 0.
Yep.
Counter is less than 11.
Okay.
And then it'd be count plus plus.
Counter plus plus. All right, I'm good with that. Inside of here, what was going on? Well, I compared this value to this value. So I'm going to say something along the lines of if array num sub
Counter
counter
is greater than
good.
array num counter plus 1.
Excellent. And that was another thing, going back to those loop solutions from last class. Hopefully you looked online to check it out, because my inner loop on the one of them actually used the first counter as its starting point. All right, so I'm thinking about this right now. So if that is greater than, what do I need to do? Swap them?
Yes.
I'm just making a note there. I know I need to swap them, which is those 3 lines of code that I have written down. And what else? Remember back here, I said, if I swap them, I have to do it again.
You would probably make some kind of Boolean as true, like swapped true.
Swap equals true. And what did we call that again? Using this variable swap. What did we call that? We called that a flag. We called it a flag. All right. So now I just took care of my inner loop. And when we went through and did this by hand, that's what I did. I went through, did a comparison side by side. And if I had to make a swap, I swapped them. And now I noticed that we said, oh yeah, if we did make a swap, we want to have swap set to true. All right, I'm okay with all that. Now that's my inner, and I'm allowed to draw lines. I'm allowed to do whatever I want. But now it said if I did swap them, I need to do it again. So let's see, help me out here. In fact, I'm planning ahead.
Would you do a while
Yep.
loop while swap is true or while swap?
Sure, I can just do while swap, okay? And while swap is going to get me inside this mess. But what would be the problem? Once swap becomes true, in fact, I'm going to need swap equals true before my loop to get me in there. Okay, but somehow I need to get swap to be false. Well, let's see. After I went through all of this, I want to reset and restart again. So after I went through all of this, and I know I had to do it again, I want to reset and start again. So the first thing inside of my while loop is I'm going to make swap false. So now it's false. If something inside of my for loop changes it to true, I'm going to come back up and do it again. But I'm going to reset swap to false in case I'm done up to that point. All right. So I'm going to put you in small groups. I want you to write a program that has a function called swap. That'll be nice and easy and short. You can use 2 reference variables and then inside have the work. Then I want you to write a function called bubble sort that uses this algorithm. And once again, it has a for loop, that's my inside. It has a while loop on the outside. It repeats until no swaps are made. Just a little side note, this is bad for large amounts of data. Large arrays, yeah, not so good for it. All right, so I'm going to pause. I'm going to put you in some groups.